Hello and welcome to another episode of Geared Toward Gear. My name is Sean and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm reviewing a fixed blade, something that's never been done on this channel. I own a number of fixed blades and I enjoy them. I have EDC'd one in the past, but never reviewed one on the channel, so this is a first for me. So hopefully this goes well. And if it doesn't, let me know. Or if it goes really well, also let me know, because positive feedback is good too. So we are reviewing a small EDC fixed blade from PHL Knives out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It is owned, operated, and all these knives are made by a gentleman named Rich. And this was sent to me on loan from my friends JR and Dustie from the Sharp Spot in the Sharp Spot Hanks. Many of you probably know JR and Dustie. And JR and I were talking not too long ago, and you know, he's really gotten into EDC fixed blades over the last couple of years, and I was kind of having some similar thoughts that maybe I wanted to start EDCing a fixed blade. And he happened to mention, hey, Sean, you know, Dusty and I both have one of these Lil Jawns from PHL Knives, and if you want us to send you one for a little test drive, we'd be happy to. And I thought that was extremely gracious and generous of them, and so I said, yeah, that'd be fantastic. So they sent me one, and the one they sent me was Dusty's, and I'm glad that they sent me hers because hers is a drop point, which would be my preference. JR's, if I'm not mistaken, is a Warncliffe. So it is the Lil Jawn, spelled Jawn, as you can probably see from the description and the title, and yeah, made right here in the U.S. in Philadelphia by Rich. And I'll start by saying that Rich started making knives as a hobby just like 2.5 years ago, and has grown it into a business. It's not his full-time gig, but he does it as a business, and it's been growing. It's continuing to grow, and he's got a few different models that he makes, different blade shapes, different handle materials, and all that good stuff. So this is one of his kind of standard designs, standard models, and it's called the Lil Jawn. It does come with a Kydex sheath. This one is in this beautiful robin's egg blue, which I carried with no shame whatsoever. Granted, it was kind of concealed because of the way this is designed, but I carried it on my gym shorts just around the house, kind of in the appendix position. And when I was out and about, if I had my firearm with me, I would carry it kind of at the 3 o'clock position off to my right-hand side. So the retention's a little loose, but it is adjustable. I chose not to tighten it because it's not mine, and everybody has their own preference for level of retention. So I just left it the way it was, and it was just fine. There's no concerns with it going anywhere. So let's talk some specs here, price, all that good stuff. Then I'll get into some of the more intricate details about this knife. So the cost for this knife is going to be about $150, and I feel like that's a fair price. Again, I'm not a custom knife guy. I don't fully understand price points, but I can imagine a lot of work went into this, like a lot of hours, and so I feel like that price point is quite fair for what you're getting here. So $150, and if you want something from PHL Knives, he does have an Etsy store where you can see what's kind of currently available. In addition, he's very active on Instagram. He'll kind of post pictures of things that are kind of in the works. And if you want to get in touch with him directly, Instagram's probably the best route. He's very responsive, super nice, genuine dude, easy to talk to, happy to answer questions, and he answered a number of them for me. And so it was definitely a pleasure talking with Rich. So if you have any interest in his knives, definitely reach out to him on Instagram, and he'll get you squared away. So the Lil Jawn is a 5 1/4 inch overall knife. So it's a small EDC fixed blade. The handle material is G10. The blade steel is 80 CRV. And again, it comes in at about $150. So let's do a couple size comparisons. We'll start with the Mini Griptilian, which is going to make the Lil Jawn look pretty tiny. And one more size comparison, which is actually pretty damn close, almost identical in overall length, is actually the Zebra F701 pen, the one that I reviewed just recently. It's like a millimeter longer than the Lil Jawn. So if you have one of these pens, and if you don't, I don't know why, but if you don't have one of these pens, buy one. But if you do, that's basically the overall length is about that, about 5 1/4 of an inch. Your blade length is 2.5 inches with about a 2.25 inch cutting edge. Your handle length is also going to be about 2.5 inches, maybe just a hair over, to kind of make that overall length of just about 5.25. So let's start with the blade, kind of work this way like we typically would, and just give a little more detail here. So the blade, as you can see, is a drop point. The finish is a acid etched stone wash. It has his maker's mark there, the Liberty Bell, which looks really nice. The grind on this is going to be a convex saber grind, which we'll talk a little more about. Comes to a nice keen edge, super sharp. Came to me super sharp. Maintained that edge, and I stropped it today actually, like 10 strokes each side, and it's shaving sharp. I may shave some hair a little later on. So the blade steel, as I mentioned, is 80 CRV. It's a carbon steel, very popular in knife making. From what I understand, it's a good steel for knife making in that the process for heat treatment, quenching, tempering, things like that is, I don't want to say forgiving, but it tends to result in a pretty consistent final product, somewhere in like the 59 to 61 HRC range. This one has a really thick blade stock, so a very, very strong blade. It's not going to chip or crack, or you're not going to break the tip off this thing. It's a tank. So that's what we're looking at as far as the blade. The stock, as I mentioned, is 5 millimeters, which is pretty darn thick. It does taper towards the tip, but even so, it's still really thick at the tip. So you're not going to snap this thing. I mean, unless you're just abusing it. This is going to be a very, very strong blade. And having that convex grind, there's more steel left on the blade. If you were to take this and turn it into a flat grind, you would have to remove steel to make that flat. If you then wanted to make the flat grind into a hollow grind, you'd have to take out even more steel. So there's more steel left on this blade than if it were to have been done in a flat grind or a hollow grind. There are going to be performance differences between a convex, a flat, and a hollow, but to me this is kind of a general purpose utility EDC knife, so it's not a huge issue. I had one instance where it had a bit of trouble getting through some material, but I think it had a lot less to do with the grind and more to do with just the overall thickness of that blade stock. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Moving to the handle, it's G10, as you can see. I like the shape in that it's kind of bulbous here at the end. Makes for a nice secure grip. This thing is going nowhere. And I like the juxtaposition and contrast between kind of this rugged, kind of acid-etched stonewash finish on the blade, and then this really clean, almost tuxedo, smooth finish on the G10. I just think it's a nice contrast. And then you've got this beautiful file work on the back, which is all done by hand. The jimping is all filed and cut in there by hand as well. And your handle scales is actually four pieces of G10. Black, white. And as you can see, it is contoured beautifully. Everything's nice and rounded. No sharp spots at all. Sharp spot. No sharp spots at all. Your pins are actually G10 as well, which is interesting. I'm used to seeing like brass pins and mosaic pins and things like that. So to see G10 I thought was cool. Again, keeping with that black and white theme. And on the file work, I believe the way this is done, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this is backfilled with like an epoxy resin that's been dyed with a pigment to make it black. Again, to kind of make that file work really, really pop. So it looks gorgeous and is really well finished on the handle. The only complaint I have really with this knife at all is an ergonomic, I guess, issue, and that is that this radius right here, which is basically your finger choil, where your index finger would go, the transition between that and this flat portion here, that is a 90-degree angle. And so in a Saber Grip, if you really bear down, at least with my hand, if I really bear down, that kind of sharp 90-degree corner digs into my right index finger, and it just doesn't feel fantastic. So I'd like to see those edges kind of knocked off a little bit, which you could either do yourself, or I'm sure Rich would do that if you wanted him to. But otherwise, it's perfectly comfortable. The jimping is functional. It's a little sharp on the edges. Again, I'd probably just knock that off just a little bit, but I think 99% of the time when you use a knife like this, it's going to just be kind of a light to medium, Saber grip. I used it a lot in this grip. What do you call this grip, by the way? If anyone knows, let me know. I know, pinch grip would be something more like that, but I use this grip quite a bit to open packages because, that helps kind of control the depth of your blade, right? So if you want to go into a package, it's going to stop once it hits your finger. So I use that grip quite a bit, a little bit of pinch grip. I did some draw cuts to peel an apple one time, and it did everything I asked it to, with the exception of some really, really thick, like double-walled cardboard. It just had a hard time slicing because it's such a thick blade stock. There's a lot of friction. And this is not a slicer, I don't think it's designed to be a slicer. You look at something like the Spyderco Centofonte 3, which has crazy thin blade stock. I mean, if you compare the two, see how thin that is compared to the Lil Jawn. Like, this is more designed to be a slicer, right? So you just have to understand kind of what you're working with and what it's going to be best suited for. But for 95% of the tasks that I use this for, it performed just fine with no issues whatsoever. The edge came to me nice and sharp, as I mentioned. So it was fun for me to carry. It was kind of a fun exercise in kind of trying to learn or decide whether or not I want to start to EDC a fixed blade. Am I going to? I don't know. Because I think the question a lot of people will have is, are you going to go buy a Lil Jawn or some design from PHL Knives? And I don't know. I don't know that I'm going to start EDCing a fixed blade. I will say I did buy an EDC fixed blade about this size, actually, from a friend of mine who made it. And I bought it literally like 2 days, I think, before JR sent this to me. So I do have that. It doesn't have a sheath. And I'll show that on a future video, but I just haven't decided yet because, again, it just felt a little foreign to me to have an EDC fixed blade because I'm so used to reaching for my folder. As a matter of fact, it took me like a day to really kind of remember that I had this on my belt or in my shorts because I would just always reach for my folder. And so it took a little getting used to, and I think with more time, I could definitely get used to it. And I can certainly see the utility in having a fixed blade, right? It's going to be stronger, especially one as thick as this. And having something concealable like that you could, in theory, use as a kind of last-ditch defensive tool if you wanted to. Now, is this a combat knife? No. Is that what it's designed for? No. Does it have a sharp edge and a pointy tip? Yes. Right? So any knife technically can be a defensive tool, or can be a weapon, I should say. So having an EDC fixed blade that is on your belt that you can quickly draw in some sort of an emergency, whether that's to cut a seat belt or defend your life, I guess any fixed blade could technically serve that purpose. So, but that's, again, I don't think when Rich designed this, he designed this as a fighting knife. This is an EDC blade. Absolutely, 100%. This is an EDC knife for everyday tasks. And in that capacity, I think it works quite well. It's just, for me, a matter of whether or not I'm going to start to EDC a fixed blade. And I just haven't decided yet. 6 days consecutively with this knife still wasn't enough to kind of come to a conclusion on that. So I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Do you EDC a fixed blade? And if so, what do you carry? Also, let me know what you think about this, about the Lil Jawn. Just the design in general, the blade shape, materials. I'd love to hear your feedback on what you think of this particular knife. And again, all the links will be below if you want to get in touch with Rich and explore, kind of what he has to offer. But it's a good knife, absolutely. It's well made. The craftsmanship is there. It's something that I certainly couldn't do. And I respect anybody who can make something with their hands. I'm more of the guy that does DIY projects. I do build some things, a little bit of woodworking, nothing crazy, restorations, things like that. But I've never done any metalwork, any knife making, and I respect anybody that can take a blank of steel and turn it into this. To me, that is impressive, and it was a pleasure to carry. So I think, Rich, you did a great job on this knife. There's no question about that. And thank you to JR and Dustie for letting me use it. And let me quickly try to demonstrate if I can get it to focus. I have really light colored hair. I've mentioned that in the past, but I just want to kind of show you that this thing is plenty sharp. Just took a nice little tuft of hair off my arm, and I'll be sure, Dusty, to clean this, get rid of all my DNA, and put a little bit of oil on it before I put it in the mail to ship it back to you. And you'll probably have it back in your possession before this video actually posts. But yeah, wicked sharp. And again, I don't know if JR put an edge on it, but or if the stropping, you know, kind of helped refine it a little bit. But very, very sharp. A very sharp knife. And that's what we want our knives to be, is sharp. A sharp spot. So that has been my review of a fixed blade. So let me know how I did, because I feel like that, I don't know. I'm just so not used to reviewing fixed blade. It's weird. And if you have a YouTube channel, if you're watching, whether it's Big Red EDC or Zach or Zeb, I know you've done a ton of fixed blades, but was it weird for you the first time you reviewed a fixed blade? Because you would think it would be so much easier than a folder, because there's no mechanism, there's no lock, there's no ball bearings, or, you know, there's no flipper tabs. It's a full tang fixed blade. You would think it would be so much more straightforward, but there's still a lot going on here. It's still a very intricate piece of cutlery, and there's a lot to it, and I'm just not used to reviewing them, frankly. So hopefully I did it justice. I hope I did. If I didn't, you can roast me in the comments, but that's the Lil Jawn from PHL Knives. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and thanks again to JR and Dusty for allowing me and trusting me with this knife. Thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.